So
we're on.
So tell me when I've got to stop swearing, Surinder, when we're live. Oh, sorry, we're live. All right, I better stop swearing. Right. So everybody's favorite part of the week, Thursday afternoon, 5 p.m. The bit everybody looks forward to, and they can't wait to get going on this. Actually, I've got to close something. I don't want to share this screen. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble if I share that screen, actually. Right. All right. Thursday afternoon, 5 p.m. Everybody's favorite hour of the week, the TPP show. And we got some magic going on today. This is going to be really good, actually. No pressure on our speaker here, right? So, yeah, we've got a special speaker here today. I'm not going to say too much because I won't do him justice. And it's been hard work getting Callum on, so I'm just calling him Callum. I'm going to let him introduce himself. But what I say to you every week: put down your colouring pencils, get out your writing pens, notebooks, take some great notes, because Callum is going to share some really good stuff. Experience on the ground. This man does it in real life. So before I stop talking, I know what he's going to ask me. I've been doing Zoom for the last 2 years. My voice is going, but anyway, never mind about that. We all have to make sacrifices. Been doing Zoom for the last 2 years. I've got psychic abilities, and I know what Callum's going to ask me. First question. Callum, over to you.
Oh, thank you.
Hang on. Let me predict what you're going to ask me. Can I share the screen?
Can I share my screen?
Well, Surinder, can you break out the 50p so Callum can share his screen?
Callum should be able to share the screen now.
Excellent, thank you.
Where you go?
Can you see that? Okay.
Definitely.
Go full screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks very much, Dil and Surinder, for inviting me to talk. So my presentation today is going to be around growing a property portfolio successfully. So yeah, CGLS Property is my main business, and Montagna Property Partners is the sourcing arm, which brings in stock for us to buy, and we either hold or we hold most stock for long term, and rarely sell. It's a bit about me. So I started in property in 2017 started off by buying my main residence. So this was testing the buy, add value and refinance strategy. So one challenge was my age. So most lenders required you to own your own property. So that's why I thought I'll start with that first. So yeah, done that. Managed to recycle my capital and then put it to work on the next deal. And things have snowballed from there, really. So initially stuck to my local area, which is Southend in Essex, where I grew up and still live. So this is where I had the most knowledge and a good network of contacts. It's a lot easier starting locally if you can, obviously in higher value areas, and if you're starting off with a limited pot of money, it is harder to find deals and grow as quick as you'd want. But over time, I've widened my geographic area, really, grown quite a sizable portfolio across the southeast. More just born out of the fact that there's only so many deals in your local area, and particularly in the southeast, it is quite tricky to come by profitable deals. So yeah, along the bottom, I was featured in the NRLA Spring magazine last year. I'm a committee member of the Southeast Alliance of Landlords, Agents and Residents. So that's a landlord association based in Southend in Essex. That's been a really good networking group. We've managed to lobby the council to also reduce the selective licensing fee and make some concessions in a lot of areas as well. Also, winner of the Southeast Business Awards last year, and also featured on Property Elevator on Property TV. It's a bit about my portfolio, really. So as I've diversified, I've diversified by location, so not being restricted to local area anymore, and then by asset. So primarily, it's still in residential. So by asset, I mean single lets and HMOs. Not restricted to just one tenant type either. I'll come on to that a little bit more later on. Built some key relationships and got deep market knowledge of my areas to a point where you become a bit like a taxi driver. You know all the streets. You know how many bedrooms and the floor plans of every street locally in your areas. So that's really good to become that knowledgeable in the areas that you're investing in. I've got a track record of buying properties discounted, adding value, and then asset managing them. A great relationship with funders as well, which has come over time. Initially getting started, it was quite hard to come by funding, but now it's got a lot easier, I'd say. As you get more scale, it becomes a lot easier to raise finance. Got established really good relationships with housing providers as well to de-risk and bulletproof the portfolio, and also enhance cash flow. So what I look at is net returns over the life cycle of a property. So if you take like a 10-year view and you think about the property will need some refurbishment over that time. So you might well need a new kitchen and bathroom and things like carpet and that. And you've got tenant changeovers. If you look at like the net returns that are on offer and you're stripping out some of the management, social housing can be a very lucrative strategy, and also less management effort. So it's a good way to diversify. Warren Buffett, got a great idol. So I've lived by his mantra that price is what you pay and value is what you get. Particularly important when I see a lot of people getting enticed to certain deals, and if you look at it for what the effort is required, it doesn't really warrant the effort. And also it comes down to kind of the management of the property as well. I see a lot of landlords that will penny pinch, and it will cost them dearly in future as well. So when they come to sell the property, or eventually something like say they skimp on some maintenance costs, and eventually you need to replace certain items and cost you a lot more. So it's a good thing to bear in mind. So really how I grew. So I started off small, tested and proved the concepts of buy, add value and refinancing. Built relationships with agents and done a lot of repeat business. And I've been quite focused on the money side and deals. Without one, it's hard to do the other. So it's really key to keep an eye on those two things. And I've really looked at systemizing the management and all areas. It just becomes a lot easier when you scale up to systemize all processes. And then on the asset management side, so something that quite an interesting side that's not often looked at. So just making sure you can get the most out of each property, so you're maximizing it to its full potential. So that could be changing the tenant type. Could be as simple as like I've got a couple of flats, taking over the right to manage on some of them. So you're reducing the service charges, for example. So doing all things. I've done many different things, like trying to improve the street scene of certain roads where I've bought quite heavily. lobbying councillors and things to get stuff done, all plays into the bigger picture. So some of the challenges, so it's goes without saying, like finding deals at the moment is very difficult, namely because there's a lack of stock, and also really increased competition has made it difficult to buy at the right prices, which is especially harder in higher value areas, I feel. There's a lot of kind of typical refurb deals get overbid by people either buying them as their main residences or not appreciating all of the costs, and that you're often better off buying a property done up than bothering to do the refurb and wasting all that time and effort. So yeah, that's a really tricky thing at the moment. Also carrying out refurbs, so there's labour shortages at the moment. Everybody wants extension, loft conversion, and everything else done in their properties. So yeah, that's led to a lot of good tradespeople being booked up for very long into the future. And material prices also going up. So everything seems to be going up with general inflation. As the tradespeople are so busy, they're putting their prices up as well. So I think heavy refurb deals at the moment, unless you're buying them at good prices, I'd shy away a bit, because it is quite hard to compete on some of them. So scaling as well. So as you scale, managing properties and tenants becomes another tricky issue that you need to keep your eye on, and having a view of the future legislation as well. Funding becomes an issue at the start, and I think until you get to a certain scale where the banks really want to lend to you, they've got a lot of appetite. At the start, they're a bit hesitant. They think you're an amateur landlord and you don't know what you're doing. So that's a issue when you're getting started. And the general private rental sector direction of travel. So we've got lots of things in coming up, like after the Queen's speech, that we heard about the abolishment of Section 21. So what will that bring? What are the finer details of that? And also the rumoured energy performance certificate, MEES, minimum energy efficiency standards, meaning that you'll need to get an EPC rating for C sometime in the future if that comes off. So there's lots of things to be mindful of. This is a deal that Deal has helped me out on, the party wall agreement. This is a 4-bed house, purchase price of 225,000. Planning was submitted and granted for two 2-bed flats and a 1-bed flat. It's got a attractive GDV, and this one I'm intending to lease out to a social housing provider. So this come about early on in lockdown. I reached out to several hundred social housing providers, and so I've reached out to several hundred social housing providers to narrow down a select list of ones that had appetite for the particular area that I invest in, and also ones that I'd feel comfortable handing a property to. So they've got significant scale. They've got a long track record of being around, looking at their accounts, that they hold healthy cash reserves, and they know what they're doing. So I've narrowed that list down to a few providers. So shortly I'll be lining up a pre-lease agreement for that. So these are just the plans and some of the interesting things I found when clearing out the property as well. So lots of war memorabilia and interesting collection of jewellery and items. Yes, it's just below is just the plans. So yeah, just reconfiguring the property. It's one of the last remaining houses on the road because it's a very large property. So yeah, it will stand out as yeah, probably the best, hopefully the best conversion on the street. So here's a few tips to help out. So really have a focus and goal in mind. Do you want cash flow now to be able to replace your income if you're in a day job, or are you looking for more capital growth, or are you looking for both? And are you interested more in a total return over a long period? Because if so, that the cash flow you get today, it might you might be better off looking for more of a capital growth kind of strategy. So yeah, just to bear in mind and how much time you've got to spend. Get quite focused is what I'd say. Be focused on what you want to achieve, how much time you can dedicate, what resources you've got, just to become crystal clear, so you don't suffer from the shiny penny syndrome where you're getting distracted. So what's your exit as well? So it's all well and good thinking about starting and getting going, but where do you want to end up? What's your end goal? Are you looking to sell these properties in future? Are you looking to hand them down? So think about structuring that kind of exit, because there will always be an exit. We're not immortal, so just think about that. Yeah, and have measurable KPIs. So continuously look at your key performance indicators and track them so you can improve results and get better and better. And is your strategy scalable? So is your strategy will it scale, or will you be restricted to just a couple of properties, and then either you run out of money or the management becomes too much of a headache? So yeah, just think about that. Important things are to delay gratification as long as you possibly can, to benefit from compound interest. It's amazing what compounding does. So yeah, the more you can put off living off rental income, the further you can keep reinvesting that money and growing your asset base. And be open to different opportunities as well. So don't necessarily have to go actively looking for lots of different things, but if something comes up, don't immediately rule it out just because it's not what you'd want. Is there an opportunity there? Could you joint venture? Could you pass that on to somebody else maybe? And one of the key things that I see all the time, and nobody really talks about, is don't be penny wise and pound foolish. So really think about the total returns. Look after your properties. Don't penny pinch. It'll end up costing you a lot more, and yeah, you'll do well off that. And build a good professional team and have a good network of contacts. So yeah, from lots of different networking meetings and groups, I'm quite confident that if I needed to get hold of anybody, I can ask someone and only be a few people away from getting to who I need to contact. And that's my presentation. So thanks very much for listening. And now I'll get a grilling from Deal with Surinder on some questions.
Yeah, man, I've got. Look, I filled up half a book on that. Surinder, I'm going to let you go first. What questions have you got, sir?
The first question that comes to mind is, when you start off in property, you look for funding. How easy was it for you to build a relationship? Because in my days when we started, we had to build a relationship with a bank manager. And once you had that, your funding was sort of not guaranteed, but you know where you stood. But these days, it's every time you're put to the sword.
Surinder, we don't have bank managers anymore. In your day, back in your day.
Yes, that's what I said.
Sorry, Callum. I had to get that one in. Sorry, Callum. Over to you.
Yeah, I think it was before my time. I hear that a lot. You just take the bank manager out, and it's an open checkbook years ago, but not so much these days. So some banks are quite relationship driven now. Not so much on a large part though. I think for me it was more demonstrating a track record, proving you know what you're doing, and after you've grown it, your portfolio in quite a short space of time, they're paying attention. They see if they haven't lent to you before, they see all the lenders that have lent to you and you've got mortgages with at the moment, and yeah, they feel, well, you've obviously you've passed all their underwriting, so yeah, that it becomes a lot less stringent. And you can build good relationships with lenders. I've got some good relationships with lenders now, where yeah, you get to know the underwriters. You've been interviewed by them. That you've shared your business plan. They've asked you questions, and they're very comfortable. And then they've pretty much said that the next few million they've underwritten you for already. So you don't have to go through all the stringent checks every time. It's just standard list of all the documents you've got to provide, and get the valuation, and you get lent the money. So becomes a lot easier when that happens. One of the things I've been quite focused on recently has been increasing the energy performance ratings of all the properties. So I took notice of that quite early on when the consultation was out to increase the minimum energy efficiency standards so that rental properties have a rating of C or above. So even though that's not law yet, and it's still the consultation's closed, so we're waiting the outcomes of it. A lot of lenders have started paying attention to that. Initially, it was that they suggested by 2025, which doesn't give that much time. It seems unlikely, being in 2022, that it's going to happen in 2025. But lenders pay attention to that because it affects their business, because they'll be looked at on how many mortgages below the EPC rating that they'll have, and exemptions and things. So they're now giving you discounts. A lot of lenders are giving you discounts if you can reach that EPC rating, and their lenders will be looking at that. They might have software. I can only speculate at, like, looking at your portfolio, where they might be looking at the EPC ratings and think you used to be able to get the suggested costs to get you up to a C, so they might total all of that up and think, has this portfolio landlord got that much spare to upgrade all these properties? If not, we're not going to lend, or we're going to lend you at reduced loan to value. Things like that, I think will start playing a part. So I've tried to get ahead of the game.
Wow. So is that what you mean by, you use the phrase penny wise and pound foolish? Is that one of those ideas that slots into that?
Yeah, so I started off, it was about a year ago, looking to use as many of the grant schemes as possible. Firstly, you can do a lot, but a lot of these grant schemes, you can actually do a lot without actually handing over any money. So you can get a lot of free insulation measures, which makes sense now that energy prices are rocketing. I think my tenants will be very happy that that they got free insulation measures before all of this, because now there's probably a massive backlog of people wanting to get all these things done. There's probably a massive backlog now that the EPC ratings has become on a lot of landlords' radars, and also people think, oh well, why should I spend out that much money if this hasn't become a law yet, and all of that. I looked at it, the view, a lot of our loan amounts are high value, so the discount that these lenders offer for reaching an EPC of C actually meant that over a 5-year fixed period, the outlay would actually pay for itself. So regardless if this legislation comes in or not, if you can get a reduced mortgage rate and be rewarded for getting to an EPC rating of C, why not do it? Your tenants are going to benefit. You'll be able to rent the property for a premium rent. If it does come off, you're in a good position. And if not, you haven't got anything to worry about. You've benefited from a lower rate of interest, and it would have paid back itself anyway.
That's never thought of it that way. Actually, it's interesting how you've connected all the dots up. That's good, right? You initially at your presentation, and this is really interesting. You said you bought your personal residence, and you did it on a deal basis in order to recycle your capital. I'm guessing over the last year or so, we've seen, last couple of years, anecdotally, we've seen people paying too much money for property, and this is why they're all probably going to get into a state shortly. I hope not, because it's not nice for anyone. But is that part of the and Surinder connected this with how do you make a start? Is that one way of making a start, ensuring you don't pay high? You don't pay highly for your first property, even if it's your home, and you don't do it on an emotional basis, and you do it on a pound and money, value basis.
Yeah, I think if you are in a position to buy your own home at a discount and add some value and create some equity, it's a great way to go. Obviously, emotion always plays a part in your own home, but I looked at that first one as just I need to get on the ladder and tick that box for mortgage lenders, because it would be a lot of them wouldn't lend based on my age when I got started. A lot of them would say you've got to have 1 or 2 years landlord experience. You've got to own your own home. So I thought, well, as soon as I've owned my own home, that's one box I've ticked, and then once I've reached the age of 25, I've ticked another buy your first buy-to-let, you've ticked another box, and then that gets through some of the initial barriers. But yeah, I think if you can always buy properties at a discount, no matter where you are in the market, if you're buying properties at a discount, you're protecting yourself. So if there is a market fall, and the market's fallen to about the discount that you've bought it for, you haven't lost any money. So it's definitely helps recycling your capital, because otherwise you're going to have to save up money from like a main income source, so like your job, to then buy more properties. Whereas if you can recycle your cash, you can just keep going and going.
Yeah, explain to our viewers what you mean by recycle, although we won't ask Surinder yet because he'll give us the numbers. But what do you mean by recycle? So
effectively, if you're buying a property, let's take an example. Say it's easy numbers like £100,000. It's worth, but you're paying say £60,000. And then you do a bit of work to it, and say after stamp duty and all costs, you might be up to £80,000, and you get a remortgage at 75% of the value. So the value's now value's £100,000. So you put in the mortgage for a loan of £75,000, which is 75% loan to value. Then you only leave in £5,000. So the property has effectively cost you £5,000 if you look at it that way. And then based on the rental income that you'll receive, you might get that £5,000 back in a year or two after all costs. So rather than buying £100,000 property off the shelf for what it's worth, you then have to stump up 25% deposit typically, so £25,000 plus if it needs any refurb plus the stamp duty, you're probably looking at £30,000 to £35,000 if you have to buy it the traditional route. It's a lot easier said than done. Like people preach the buy, add value, and refinance as something quite easy to do. I think to buy my first house and do that, I think I viewed probably about 50 properties for about 3 or 4 months, and that was quite good to get started. Didn't compared to the numbers for some periods that I think about 50 properties to get one is quite a good statistic.
Surinder, you had a comment there? I think that's a good start. Well, but a lot of people aren't prepared to put that sort of, and you said viewed 50 properties. You don't mean looked them up on Google. You mean actually go around and have a look at them?
Yeah, viewed and offered, on 50 properties to get one.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of people be put off by that, but that's a super good tip. Surinder, how many have you viewed?
Well, if I start counting now, we'll be here till next year.
Oh, dear. All right.
Instead of that, what is now happening is that's where the sources come in, and people who don't have the time to view or evaluate those properties go to the sources and get the service done.
Callum, did you say you've got a sourcing division as well?
Yeah, so I've got a sourcing arm to the business, which is Montagna Property Partners. So really that acts as the kind of go to market to agents and professional traders, whereas CDLS Property is more the tenant facing arm to the business. So try to separate out the two.
Wow, been a busy boy. So you know your first house. Do you still live in it, or have you turned that into what was the term these mortgage brokers love using? Let to buy.
I've still got it. It's rented to lodgers. It pays all the bills.
Nice. No, it's super interesting how that journey started. So you're only 26 now, right?
28 now, yeah.
28, bloody hell.
I wish I was still 26.
I wish I was still 28. Okay, so you talked about the shiny penny syndrome, but to balance it, there's also look at opportunities. Give us a little example of that and how you've sort of used that. That's quite a big difference, isn't it? Because lots of people love chasing the shiny penny, but they also think that means turning off new opportunities. So let's have your wisdom on that.
I think you can become quite distracted if you're jumping from one thing to another. So I think you've just got to knuckle down and focus on one strategy. So whether that be say like rent to rent, for example, if you got if you haven't got much capital to get started, that might be a way of getting going and building up some capital, or whether you want to do the buy, add value, and refinance, or commercial conversions, developments, sourcing, service accommodation, lots of different things. But I think if you start off trying to do all of them, you get nowhere. So I think you just need to narrow down what resources have you got, how much time can you dedicate, what skills have you got, are you getting involved with a partner that's got certain skills as well. So where do they kind of fit, and then just pick one strategy initially to go off, and then you can have like sub strategies. So you take like the buy, add value, and refinance. Then you can look at HMOs that they play a part in that strategy, and social housing and lots of other different areas. And then you might come across a property next door or something. You might have a HMO, and you might know the social housing provider quite well, and the landlord says, I don't want to sell yet, but would you be interested in doing a rent to rent effectively. So yeah, don't rule it out. There's if opportunities come up, you can take them, but yeah, I wouldn't say try and pursue everything all at once.
No, it's a great tip and really well explained.
But the thing here comes, if you're, say, doing buy-to-lets and you go into a rent-to-rent, now you are in effect taking on a job rather than an investment because there's no capital appreciation in that. It's just earning the money.
That's it.
And is it what people want when they go into property investing, to find another job?
But
Yeah.
the interesting point was Callum said, if you don't have the capital.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to get Callum's view on this. So if you haven't got the capital, and I get your point, rent to rent is not easy. It's not as easy as people think. You're really going to learn property by the hard way, I'm guessing.
But rent to rent and HMO, they're virtually the same thing.
Well, Callum, what's your view on that? I try not to do. Well, actually, I don't do either of those. But what's your view on that comment? Rent to rent and HMO, same thing.
Yeah, I have seen people that I know quite well doing rent to rent and HMOs quite successfully. So yeah, I think one, like HMOs, if you're buying them, you've got to do the refurb and everything, the whole buying process, and really laying out a lot of money to get them up and running. Whereas rent to rent, you still got to adhere to all of the HMO regulations and the laws and everything else that goes with it, and licensing. But I think if you can get to a certain scale, it's like anything. If you can reach a certain scale, you can make good money in rent to rent. If you can remove yourself, I think most people go into it kind of and start trying to managing these properties themselves, and often sucks their time up, and then they've created another job for themselves. So I think if you are going to get into it, have a plan and think. I'd say you don't want to be getting involved in the management of HMOs. So when you team up with a HMO manager, take a bit less profit out of it, but then you haven't got to deal with any of the tenants. You can go and find another rent to rent and scale it that way.
All right. Are you happy, Surinder? That's a good answer, I reckon.
Well, no, that's exactly right, because these days there are sources who find you HMOs ready prepared. All you have to do is just pay the rent and you run it for them. That's why that's what they're in it to get their investment out and their capital appreciation, while somebody else takes on the hassle of running it.
So, yeah, okay. I think Callum's answer was better. Surinder, sorry, mate. You don't get that one, sorry. Callum, I'm going to ask you a question, and I think it's a bigger subject, actually. You talk about systemizing stuff. Have a crack at that, but you might have to come back and do another presentation on that, because that's a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I think if you can systemize things, so from a tenancy management perspective, making sure you've got all of the paperwork all in order, it will stand you in good stead. So if anything bad does happen, you're prepared. I see a lot of landlords that they haven't got their paperwork in order. There's missing documents, things that haven't been signed, and so like gas safes that have past their expiration date, and it all kind of compounds. I think you've got to really set off with good systems in place, and that will do you very well. I think that the management in a portfolio is often overlooked. People think, I can just hand it over to any old letting agent, let them get on with it. But the letting agents, a lot of them that I've come across, I mean, there's a lot of good letting agents, but there's an awful lot of bad ones that aren't up to date on the regulations, haven't got their paperwork in order, and they've got a lot of younger staff, and they're it tends to be the first person that comes to view it gets the keys and they've moved in. With little referencing, that's why I've been quite thorough in selecting our tenants. So go through quite stringent checks, looking at their bank statements to see have they got money left at the end of the month and things. I think if you can create some of that processes in place, that you can hand that over to somebody else, they can follow that procedure, enables you to scale a lot quicker and you haven't got to worry as much.
Yeah. So stitching time saves 9 sort of scenario. And people, I don't think people understand all of this paperwork. You could get a tenant in without the paperwork, but if you need to evict someone, that's another ball game.
That's it. Yeah, and the fines can be horrendous for getting it wrong. So best to do things properly from the start.
Yeah, it's a great tip. So I'm gonna ask you to come back and do a whole talk on systemizing stuff, because I like the way you're approaching this stuff. What do you think, Surinder?
No, exactly. Systemization is where you build a business. Unless you have systems, you have not got a business. If a person is running the business and everything is up there in their head, it's not a sellable business. It's the systems that provide that. Should anything happen, say if I was done, anything happened to me, somebody can walk in, look at the system, and continue with the business.
Yeah, if something happens to you, I didn't do it, right? So
yeah.
Callum, sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Callum, you talked about 10-year life cycle. Tell us a little bit more about that. That's an interesting concept. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, so you can, if you think about property as a long-term investment, so if you look at over a 10, maybe even a 20-year view, there's a couple of ways of looking at things. So if you're buying a property in 10 years' time, if there's a bit of if it's like a corner plot, could you get planning permission on something? Maybe that land has some hope value in the future, it hasn't really been factored in, so that affects your total return, and you need to look at over a 10 and 20-year period of owning a property. It's going to need recarpeting a few times. It's going to need it might need a new boiler. It probably need new kitchen and bathroom over that time, and repainting several times. So people don't really take that into account when they're doing their numbers. So if you did take that into account, especially for HMOs where the tenant turnover is very high, if you're doing white collar professional HMOs, trying to make them look like boutique boutique hotels, as I like to call them, with all en suites and TVs. People are even putting gyms and things, mood lighting, and whatever the latest trend is. You've got to think, in a couple of years' time, is that property still going to be desirable, or have you got to keep up with the next latest HMO trend? Have you got to provide a swimming pool or something? It seems like the barrier, like the quality level, keeps going up for HMOs as there's more competition. But you've got a lot of costs with voids and the high tenant churn when running HMOs. So if you factor that in, single lets, often the net return isn't looking that much different from certain HMOs, if depending on area to area. But social housing HMOs, you might be taking less rent, but your net return, because you're not having to manage the property actively and continually advertise for tenants. You're not having to deal with voids all of the time, and redecorating rooms and doing the odd bits of repairs. If you're passing a lot of the responsibility over to the social housing provider, your net return is often better than running the HMO. I see a lot of landlords kind of falling for that trap. They look at the gross rent, and that they don't really look at what they're getting net, and they're spending all this time working for next to nothing when they could have leased them properties to a social housing provider.
Oh, that would be another thing of, that's probably pound foolish and penny sensitive. So it's pounds and tens of pounds and hundreds and time.
Yeah.
So, you know, and to quote our last week's guest, do the bloody well, to paraphrase him, do the bloody numbers, as he would say. His phrase was read the bloody lease. Bernie Walker. Surinder, any more questions? That's been awesome.
That's a very good presentation. Thank you, Callum. And I hope you will contact us when you can do a program on systemization.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
That could be part of that the thing we were talking about, the book before.
Yeah, well, Surinder, that's a secret. That's a secret project. You can't tell the viewers on that yet.
Well, nobody's been told anything. It's just
you just slipped out, mate. I had to stop you there. What's going on, right? Right. No, Callum, that's been an absolute brilliant presentation. Thank you for that. Man, I'm going to swap places. I'm going to be 28 again, I think. I'm going to go back. Sorry?
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, all right. I'll have to stop being 29. I'll start being 28 now, right?
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Adding another 40 onto it.
No, that's you, mate. That's not me. That's you. That's you. Callum, he's talking about himself again. Look. Yeah. No comments there. So, look, Callum, brilliant presentation. For our viewers, please watch that. And some really, really good material. This guy definitely knows what he's talking about. Don't be fooled by his young age that he's declared. I don't know if you've told anybody how old you are. You've definitely declared it on this program. Surinder, if you're thinking of a tagline, say, how a 28-year-old makes his way into the property business.
No, 28-year-old has made his way into the business.
Yeah. Let's all learn from this 28-year-old. I think that's a great tagline for our YouTube thing, right? Callum, brilliant program. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. And most of all, there's some really good insight there. Please come back and do us a program on systemization. I think that'll be great. And this 10-year life cycle is a brilliant one to talk about as well, because I think a lot of people miss that idea. They think, yeah, got a property portfolio, I'm rich, and then the work hits them. Yeah. No, it's some great information. So thank you very much. Really great program. I really enjoyed having that chat with you. Let us know how you get on with your flat conversion as well. That'll be another interesting case study.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Can't wait to hear from that. Surinder, fantastic program. Really good stuff. We got who have we got next week, or is that still a secret?
No, so be somebody to do with planning, because with all these planning changes coming up.
Oh, wow.
Proposed by the government.
Yeah, good God. Leave it alone, man. I mean, haven't they got enough problems to deal with? Just leave the plan. Anyway. All right. So there you go. We might get a planning special guest next week. I got a feeling I know who it might be. But anyway, so put it in your diaries, put it on your calendars, put it on your whiteboards. And if you forget all of that, write it on your forehead, because you could tell when you're brushing your teeth. Next Thursday, 5 p.m, your favorite time of the week, the property professionals. We'll see everybody then. Thank you very much. And special thanks to our guest.
Thank you once again.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Surinder, don't forget to turn it off. We're not going to be here for 24 hours again, right?
No, please don't go down that route again.
Well, I've got to keep reminding you. You know, you don't stop me swearing and then you don't turn it off. So I have to sit here for 24 hours when the live carries on.
Okay. Yeah, without sleep.
Of course. I was watching it for all 24 hours.
But it was you who was meant to switch it off.
Yeah, but that's a matter of dispute. We're going to have a meeting on that one.
Anyway, thanks, Callum, and
Thank-
see you, everybody else, on next week's program at 5 o'clock. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Right.